They're attacking Earth. The Galaxy Council watched in horror. The vote was supposed to be about water rights. Specifically, it was about the underground water reserves beneath a moon called Death 4, which 3 different species all claim to own, and none of them actually used. The argument had been going on for 11 years, and today was the day the council was finally going to resolve it, or at least reschedule it again, which amounted to the same thing. Councillor Bram of the Hethari people had brought a very long speech. He had practiced it. He was 3 minutes in when the chamber interpreter, a small gray-skinned Ulvan named Pick, put a hand over her earpiece and went absolutely still in the way that small creatures go still when something large is nearby. Bram kept talking. Pick stood up. She never stood up during sessions. It was not her place. She stood up anyway and said, in a voice that was too loud for the room, "Someone is firing on the 3rd planet of the Sol system." Bram stopped talking. Sol system. Most of the delegates knew the name. Few had thought about it recently. It was a quiet system. One inhabited planet, still pre-contact, still classified as developing. The kind of system that showed up in quarterly reports under the heading "No Action Required" and was then forgotten until the next quarterly report. The delegate from the Farron people, a wide, slow-moving male named Gult, said, "Sol, that is the human world." "Yes," Pick said. She was still standing. Her hand was still over her earpiece. Her face had gone a color that in Ulvan physiology meant something between shock and fear. "The attack is being conducted by Vorath Collective Forces. I am reading 17 warships." 17. Against one planet with no fleet, no shields, no allies, and a population that still thought they were alone in the universe. The chamber moved the way large groups move when something goes wrong, not all at once but in a wave, the people nearest the information reacting first, and the reaction spreading outward. Several delegates tried to speak at the same time. The noise built until Council Speaker Yana, a tall Mavari female with the kind of patience that comes from doing a difficult job for a very long time, pressed the silence control and held it down until the room was quiet. "Pick," she said, "what is the current status of the human defensive response?" Pick listened. Her expression shifted in a way that was hard to read. "They are responding," she said. "The nature of the response is—" She paused. "Speaker, I am not certain I am translating the sensor data correctly." "Try." "The humans appear to have launched something from the surface, multiple somethings. The Vorath ships are reporting impacts but cannot identify the weapon type." Another pause. "One Vorath ship has gone offline." The chamber was very quiet. Gult said from the surface, "They fired from the ground." Bram, who had been standing at the speaker platform this entire time with his very long speech still in his hand, sat down slowly. He put the speech on the seat beside him. He did not look at it again. In the 3rd row from the back, a Hethari delegate named Sewell, who was very old and had read more archive files than anyone else in the room, and was generally considered to have seen everything worth seeing, leaned over to the delegate beside her, a young Torathi named Fen, and said something in a low voice. Fen looked at her. "What did you say?" "I said the Vorath made a mistake," Sewell said. She was watching the main screen where the sensor feed was now being displayed live. 17 Vorath ships and one planet and something happening between them that the chamber was only beginning to understand. A very old mistake, the oldest one. She folded her hands in her lap. They looked at something small and decided small meant weak. On the screen, a second Vorath ship went offline. Nobody in the chamber said anything. They all watched the screen. Outside the station viewports, the stars were the same as they always were, cold and distant and entirely indifferent. And somewhere among them, a species that had never asked to be found was fighting back with weapons that nobody had thought to look for because nobody had thought to look. Yana said, "Get me everything we have on Earth. Archive files, observation reports, everything. I want it on the main screen in the next 10 minutes. Pick was already pulling the files. Sewell watched the feed and did not look away. She had read the Earth files years ago, all of them, cover to cover, the way she read everything that crossed her desk. She remembered what she had thought when she finished. She had thought we should not wait too long to say hello. Nobody had listened to her then either. The Earth Archive had not been opened in full session before. Individual delegates had requested access over the years. Sewell herself had read it twice, but putting it on the main chamber screen in front of everyone while a live battle feed ran in the corner was something different. It felt like a confession. The first thing Pick found was not a dramatic file. It was a demographic report, dry numbers, population counts and growth rates over 2 centuries of observation. She put it on the screen because it was first in the index and she was pulling files fast. Galt read the numbers. Their population recovered from a planetary disease event in the early 20th century, loss of approximately 50 million individuals. Yes, Sewell said. And they continued. They always continue, Sewell said. That is the first thing you notice when you read the files carefully. There is no recorded instance of a human civilization stopping. They slow down, they suffer, they lose enormous numbers of people, and then they continue. Finn, the young Torathi beside her, had pulled up the files on his personal screen and was reading ahead. His compound eyes moved fast across the text. He stopped on something and went still. What is it? Sewell said. They have a recorded conflict, Finn said. That lasted 100 years. Several, Sewell said. Finn looked at her. Read the economic section, she said. Not the military section, the economic one. He found it, he read it. When he looked up, his expression was the expression of someone who had just understood a joke that was not funny. They kept producing, he said. During the conflict, civilian manufacturing, agriculture, scientific research. They were fighting a century-long war and they were also building universities. They compartmentalize, Sewell said. It is one of the things that confused the early observers. Most species, when under severe existential threat, narrow their focus. They concentrate entirely on the threat. Humans split their attention. They fight and they build and they grieve and they celebrate and they do all of it at the same time. On the main screen, Pick had moved to a more recent file, an observation drone report from 40 years ago. It was a behavioral study of a human rescue team responding to a structural collapse in a large city. The team worked for 71 hours without stopping. The medical notes attached to the report documented what that did to human physiology, the cortisol levels, the injury rate among the rescuers themselves, the long-term psychological effects. The team had recovered 23 survivors from the rubble. Speaker Yana read the file quietly. Then she said, they knew the physical cost going in. They always know, Sewell said. That is the second thing you notice. In the corner of the main screen, the live battle feed continued. The Voreth fleet had tried a new approach, coming in from the planetary night side where sensor coverage was theoretically weaker. The theory was wrong. 3 more ships had taken hits from weapons that were still not fully identified ground-based launches of some kind, low heat signature, high velocity, devastatingly accurate. Bram, who had spent most of the session silent, said, "Why did we not make contact earlier, if we knew they were like this?" "Because they frightened us," Sewell said. It was a simple answer and she gave it simply. The early committee reports all said the same thing. Humanity is warlike. Humanity is unpredictable. Humanity has a demonstrated willingness to cause harm on a massive scale. She paused. All of that is true. It is also true of every species in this chamber that survived long enough to reach space. We just forgot that about ourselves. Yana looked at her, and the difference, Sewell said, is that humans never stopped being afraid of themselves. They built laws, institutions, systems specifically designed to limit what they could do to each other, not because they stopped being capable of it, because they decided the capability was dangerous and needed to be controlled. She looked at the feed in the corner. A species that is afraid of its own strength and builds cages around it, anyway, is not the same thing as a species that simply has no strength. On the feed, a Voreth ship that had been trying to pull back from the engagement was intercepted by something fast and low-profile that had come up from below the planetary ecliptic. The interception was precise. The ship did not explode. It simply stopped. Fen said, "They are not trying to destroy them." Sewell looked at the feed. He was right. She had not noticed it immediately, but looking at the pattern of the last hour, the Voreth ships that were hit were disabled, not destroyed. Power gone, weapons offline, life support intact. "No," she said slowly, "they are not." The chamber was quiet around this observation. Galt said in his slow, careful way, "They are taking prisoners." Sewell was not sure that was quite the right word, but she did not correct him because she did not yet have a better one. The Voreth ship commander whose vessel had been stopped was named Drev. She had been in the collective military for 22 years. She had participated in 6 engagements, all of them successful, all of them against targets that behaved the way targets were supposed to behave. They panicked. They scattered. They either surrendered or they died. Those were the options. Those had always been the options. Her ship was called the Firm Advance, which was a name that had seemed appropriate when it was commissioned and now felt embarrassing. The Firm Advance was sitting completely dead in space, every system offline except life support, held in place by something she did not understand. Not a tractor beam. The signature was wrong for a tractor beam. It felt more like her ship had been grabbed, physically grabbed, by something that was not there. Her crew was unhurt. Her weapons were gone. Her engines were gone. Her communications were gone, all except one frequency, a narrow band signal that was coming from the planet below and was apparently hardwired into her life support system somehow, which should not have been possible. The signal was voice only. A human voice, female, calm in a way that Drev found more unsettling than anger would have been. "Commander of the Firm Advance," the voice said, in Voreth, with a slight accent but fully understandable. "Your crew's life support is stable and will remain stable. You will not be harmed. When the engagement concludes, you will be escorted to a processing area. I am going to need you to tell your crew not to attempt to restart the engines. The mechanism holding your ship will cause structural damage if the engines fire. I am telling you this so nobody gets hurt." Drev stared at the communications panel. "Who are you?" she said. "My name is Sira. I work in Earth's Orbital Coordination Division. I apologize for the abruptness of your situation. I know this is not what you expected today." Drev looked around at her bridge crew. They were all looking at her. She keyed the ship-wide channel and told her crew not to touch the engines. In the council chamber, Pick had found the frequency and patched it through to the main speakers. The chamber listened to this exchange in complete silence. When it ended, Fen said, "She apologized." "Yes," Sewell said. "They are holding 17 Voreth ships, and a human apologized for the inconvenience." "She said she knows it was not what they expected," Sewell said. "That is a specific choice of words. She is acknowledging their experience, their shock." She paused. "It is something humans do when they have hurt someone, even someone who was trying to hurt them. They acknowledge the experience." Galt said slowly, "That is strange." "It is very human," Sewell said. On the feed, the battle had shifted. It was less a battle now and more a process. The Voreth fleet had lost formation 20 minutes ago and had not regained it. Ships that tried to push forward were stopped. Ships that tried to retreat were allowed to, but only to a certain distance, and then they were stopped too. The human defense was not destroying and not surrendering. It was containing. Bram had been doing math on his data pad for the last half hour. He said, "I count 11 ships fully disabled, 4 that appear to be experiencing partial system failures and are drifting, 2 that are still maneuvering." He looked up. "The 2 still maneuvering are being left alone." Yana said, "Why?" Pick listened to the feeds for a moment. "I think," she said carefully, "that the two ships still moving are the ones carrying wounded. There are medical distress signals attached to both of them." She paused. "The humans are reading the distress signals and letting the medical ships move." The chamber absorbed this. "They can tell which ships have wounded," Bram said. "They have been scanning continuously since the engagement began," Pick said. "Their sensor resolution is significantly higher than our per-contact estimates suggested." Speaker Yana pressed her fingers together in the Mavari gesture that meant she was thinking carefully before she spoke. "They are conducting a military engagement," she said, "while simultaneously sorting their opponents by medical status and adjusting their response accordingly." "Yes," Sewell said. "In real time." "Yes." Yana was quiet for a moment. Then she said something that she would later be quoted on in 3 different historical accounts of this day. She said, "We classified them as developing. What exactly were we waiting for them to develop into?" Nobody answered that. On the feed, the last maneuvering Voreth ship, the one whose medical distress signal had just gone offline, came to a slow stop. The engagement was effectively over. 17 ships, none destroyed, all stopped. Life support on every vessel intact. Sewell looked at the numbers and felt something she had not expected to feel. Not relief that the humans had won. She had expected that in a quiet part of herself for a while now. What she felt was something closer to hope. Because winning like this, carefully, without cruelty, was harder than the other kind. And they had chosen it anyway. The Voreth High Command sent a message to the Council 6 hours after the last ship stopped moving. It was not an apology. Voreth culture did not produce apologies in official communications, a fact that every Council translator knew and had long ago stopped being surprised by. What the message said, in the careful formal language that the collective used when it was embarrassed, was that the operation in the Sol system had concluded differently than anticipated, and that the collective was prepared to discuss terms through Council mediation if the Council was willing to facilitate. If the Council was willing, as though the Council had not been watching every moment of it. Speaker Yana read the message twice and set it aside. The more immediate question was not the Vorath. The more immediate question was the communication that had arrived from Earth 40 minutes earlier, routed through the same monitoring satellite that had been carrying the battle feed. It was addressed to the Galaxy Council directly. This meant Earth knew the Council existed. This meant Earth had known for some time, or had figured it out from the satellite, or both. Pick had flagged this the moment it came in and then stood very still holding the flag and not sure what to do next. Yana had told her to put it on the main screen. The message was short. It was in 3 languages simultaneously, Vorath, and 2 others that were the most common Council trade languages, which meant whoever sent it had done research. The text read, "To whoever is monitoring this system, we have 17 Vorath vessels in a holding pattern. All crew are alive and will remain so. We would like to discuss what just happened and why. We would also like to know how long you have been out there. We have questions. We assume you have questions. Our door is open. Come knock." The chamber read it in silence. Finn said, "Come knock." "It is an idiom," Sewell said. "It means visit us. Make contact. It implies the door is already unlocked." Bram said, "They are inviting us." "They are," Sewell said. "After being attacked." "After being attacked," Sewell confirmed, "and winning, and holding 17 enemy ships with all crew alive, and then writing us a message that ends with an idiom about open doors." She looked around the chamber. "I want everyone to think about what kind of species does that. I want everyone to sit with that for a moment." The chamber sat with it. Galt said in his slow way, "It is either very confident or very naive." "Read the archive files again," Sewell said. "They are not naive." Yana called the formal session to address 2 things. The Voreth mediation request and the Earth contact message. Both needed a council response. Both were, in their own way, completely unprecedented. The debate on the Voreth request was short. The collective had violated the non-interference accord by engaging a protected developing world. The council had legal authority to mandate mediation, and it would do so. Terms would be negotiated. The Voreth would pay reparations. The chamber agreed on this in under 30 minutes. The Earth message took longer. The problem was not whether to respond. Everyone agreed they should respond. The problem was what responding meant. Earth was still technically classified as a developing world under the non-interference accord. Responding to their message would trigger a formal reclassification process, which would trigger a membership evaluation, which would trigger approximately 400 other procedural requirements that the Council had spent decades carefully constructing to make sure no species entered the community before they were ready. The system was designed to protect developing species from contact before they could handle it. Sewell stood up. She was old enough that standing up was a statement. The chamber noticed. "I want to say something about the process," she said. "The process we built was built in response to historical contact events that went badly. It was built to prevent harm to species who were not prepared for what they found." She paused. "It was not built for this situation. It was not built for a situation where the developing species finds us, writes us a polite note, and has already demonstrated that they can handle a Voreth collective attack with 17 ships and 0 fatalities on either side." She looked around the room. "The process protects the unprepared. Earth is not unprepared. We were waiting for them to be ready for us." She picked up the printed copy of Earth's message that Pick had distributed. She held it up. "They are the ones waiting for us to be ready for them." Gult made a sound that was not quite a laugh. Bram said, "What do we do about the reclassification procedure?" "We do it," Sewell said. "We do all 400 steps, and while we are doing it, we respond to their message so they are not sitting alone wondering if anyone is coming." She sat back down. "Some steps can be done in parallel. The procedure does not require us to be rude." Yana looked at her for a long moment. Then she called the vote. It passed. All 17 member species, unanimous, which had not happened in this chamber in 31 years. Pick was already drafting the response. The Council's response to Earth took 9 days to compose. Not because it was a long message. The final version was 4 paragraphs. It took 9 days because 17 species had opinions about what those paragraphs should say, and every one of those opinions was different, and several of them were contradictory. The Hethari wanted formal language. The Torathi wanted to include a cultural exchange offer in the first contact message itself, which 4 other delegations said was premature. The Farron bloc wanted a disclaimer about the non-interference accord and why it had not protected Earth in this instance, which Sewell said was the worst possible way to begin an introduction. "You do not," she said in the session where this was debated, "meet someone for the first time and immediately explain what you failed to do for them. You say hello. You answer their questions. You let them decide how they feel about the rest of it." The disclaimer was removed. The final message acknowledged Earth's communication, identified the Council, gave a brief description of what the Council was, confirmed that the Voreth situation was being addressed through Council authority, and said that the Council would very much like to meet. It ended with a line that Sewell had written herself, which simply said, "We have wanted to say hello for a long time, and we are sorry it took this to make us do it." Several delegates had objected to the apology. Sewell had said the apology was staying. It stayed. Earth's response came back in 11 hours. This was fast. Faster than the Council had expected, which meant they had been waiting near the communication relay, which meant they wanted this conversation very much. The response confirmed a meeting location, Earth's primary orbital station, and a date 17 days out, and included a list of environmental requirements for non-human visitors that was thorough enough to suggest they had been thinking about this for a while. The list covered atmosphere mixtures, temperature ranges, gravity tolerances, light spectrum preferences, and food safety considerations, with a note at the bottom that said, "We have done our best, but please tell us what we got wrong and we will fix it." Pick read this note aloud to the chamber. There was a brief silence. Fenn said they built a guest list before they knew we were coming. They built a contingency, Sewell said, for an event they hoped for. They prepared for visitors they did not know were real. She looked at the list. It was detailed. It was careful. Several of the atmospheric requirements were accurate to within a narrow margin, which required either good guesswork or access to information they should not have had. How did they get these numbers? Pick looked at the technical analysis her team had run on the document. Some of it is consistent with publicly available council data that has leaked through older communication channels. Some of it they appear to have derived themselves. The gravity tolerance ranges, for example, are not in any council document we have released. They calculated those. From what? From the sensor output of our monitoring satellite, Pick said. They reverse-engineered our equipment specifications from the signals it was broadcasting and used that to estimate what kind of biology might be operating it. The chamber was quiet for a moment. Bram said, "Our satellite that we put in their system, that we used to watch them." "Yes," Pick said. "They looked at the thing we used to watch them and used it to figure out what we were." "Yes." Bram sat back. He had run out of reactions that felt proportionate to the information he kept receiving. The delegation selection process took 4 days. Yana would lead it. Sewell insisted on being included, and nobody argued with her because she had been right about too many things already. Gult was included because the Farron people were the largest contributor to council infrastructure, and it would have been an insult to leave them out. Fenn was included because he was young, and Sewell said Earth would need to see that the council had young members too, species with futures rather than just histories. They prepared for 17 days. They studied human communication styles, which were direct in a way that some council species found aggressive, but which the briefing materials explained was not hostility, just efficiency. They studied human body language, the difference between the expressions that meant discomfort and the ones that meant concentration, which were apparently easy to confuse. They studied the handshake, the eye contact conventions, the specific kind of silence that meant a human was thinking rather than offended. On the last day before departure, Sewell sat alone in her office and read the Earth file one more time, not the dramatic parts, the small ones, the census records, the art archives, the education statistics, the hospitals per capita, the number of books published per year across different centuries, the way those numbers went up even during wars, especially during wars. She thought about a species that built libraries in the middle of conflicts, that taught children to read while the ground shook, that wrote down everything, every mistake and every recovery, and kept the records so the next generation would know. She thought about the message they had sent, "Come knock, open door, we have questions." She thought about the apology she had insisted on putting in the council's response. She had meant it when she wrote it. She still meant it. She closed the file and went a pack for the journey. The orbital station was not what any of them had expected. They had prepared for a military environment, given that the contact point was an active defense installation. What they found was something different. Someone had put plants in the corridor. Real ones, in containers along the walls, green and various, clearly chosen because they looked welcoming rather than because they served any functional purpose. The lighting had been adjusted to a warm tone that the advanced team's atmosphere readings confirmed was outside the normal operational spectrum for a military facility. Someone had changed it specifically for visitors. Sewell noticed all of this before she had taken 10 steps inside. The meeting room had a round table. This detail was in none of the briefing materials, and it was not an accident. A round table meant no head of table, no primary seat, no hierarchy visible in the furniture. Whoever had chosen the table had understood something important about first meetings. There were 8 humans already in the room when the delegation entered. They stood when the delegation came in, which the briefing had covered, and several of them were visibly nervous in the way the briefing had also covered, the slight change in skin color, the hands that were not entirely still. The nerves were not hidden. Humans apparently did not hide nerves the way some council species did. They just had them openly and kept going anyway. The woman at the center was the one who spoke first. She was not the most senior person in the room by military rank, but she was the one everyone looked at, which meant she was the most senior person in the room by actual authority. Her name was Sira. Sewell recognized the name, the voice from the battle feed, the woman who had told a Vorath commander that she was sorry for the inconvenience. Sira looked at the delegation and said, "Welcome. We are genuinely glad you are here." She paused. "We have been practicing saying that in several languages. I hope the pronunciation was acceptable." Yana said the pronunciation was excellent. Sira smiled. The briefing had explained human smiles, but seeing one directed at her was a different experience from reading about it. It involved the whole face in a way that felt involuntary, like something that happened to the person rather than something they decided to do. The session lasted 6 hours. It was supposed to last 3. Neither side wanted to stop. The humans asked about council history, how it was formed, what the early contact events had looked like, which species had joined first and why. They asked with the particular quality of attention that meant they were going to remember everything and probably write it down afterward. Several of them were writing things down during the conversation itself, in small books they carried, not data pads, actual paper books with pens, which Fenn found fascinating and later spent 20 minutes asking about. The council delegation asked about Earth, about the defense system, which Sira explained with no apparent concern about sharing the information, because the information was only useful if you were defending Earth, and they were not worried about who else knew that. About the population, about the government structure, which was complicated enough that Sira spent 40 minutes on it, and then said she could provide documents that would explain it more clearly than she could in conversation. Sewell asked about the plants in the corridor. Sira looked at her. "You noticed." "I noticed things," Sewell said. "Who decided to put them there?" "The station crew," Sira said. "We had a meeting about how to prepare the station for visitors, and someone suggested the plants and everyone agreed immediately." She paused. "We wanted it to feel like somewhere you could be comfortable, not just somewhere you could breathe." Sewell was quiet for a moment. "We have been watching your world for 214 years, she said. "We watched you build cities and lose them and build them again. We watched you make terrible mistakes and fix them. We watched you figure out your own biology, your own planet, your own history." She looked at the plants in the corridor through the glass wall of the meeting room. "And in all of that time, in all of those files, I never saw a single document that said anything about making guests comfortable." "That is not something that makes the official reports," Sira said. "No," Sewell said, "I suppose it is not." The formal first contact agreement was signed at the round table at the end of the 6th hour. It was a preliminary document, the first of many, the beginning of a process that both sides understood would take years. But the signing was real, and the hands across the table were real, and the nervousness that had been visible in the room at the beginning had shifted into something that was harder to name but easier to be in. Before the delegation left, Sira walked with Sewell to the viewing corridor, the long transparent section of the station where the planet filled the window from edge to edge. They stood there for a moment. "What happens now," Sira said, "with the Vorath?" "Mediation," Sewell said. "Reparations. A formal censure. The collective will comply because the alternative is expulsion from council trade networks, and they cannot afford that." Sira nodded. "And the crew from their ships, They are being transferred to us for processing tomorrow. I heard, Sewell said. You are giving them medical evaluations and returning them home within the week. Yes. Sewell looked at her. You won decisively. You could have kept them. Sierra looked at the planet below them, the blue and the white and the slow turn of clouds. Keeping them would not make us safer, she said. It would just make us the kind of people who keep prisoners we do not need. She was quiet for a moment. We have been that kind of people before. We did not like it. Sewell looked at the planet too. 214 years of files. Every document, every drone note, every medical report and census record and cultural archive. All of it had been preparation for this moment, and none of it had been enough to fully prepare her. She had thought, reading the files, that she understood what humans were. She had understood the facts. She had not understood what the facts added up to until she was standing here, next to one of them, looking at a world that had been alone for longer than it should have been, and hearing this woman say, "We did not like who we were, so we changed." She thought about the apology she had put in the council's first message. She thought it had not been enough. But it was a start, and humans, she had learned, were very good at starting.